I have no reason to disagree with Dunn, but I'm still annoyed. I'm annoyed because Indiana, its state seal, its mythology, is a con job. It's a con job like so many of the neighborhoods I've known since youth. All named for what they wish they had, or what they actually did have before the bulldozers and construction crews showed up. You know the type. Deer Crossing, Fox Hollow, Woodhaven, a land where every place is like no place in particular. But I'm not disparaging those locations. I'm lamenting them. I'm lamenting them because I know Henry, my nephew, and his siblings, and too many kids in too many American neighborhoods are also getting conned, but they don't even get the benefit of seeing the trees before the bulldozers arrive, before the braggadocio of economic growth kicks in. Their homes went up in cornfields, or what had been cornfields, in the good old days, my myths. I appreciate seeing people enjoying this park right now. Given what I'm fighting, cancer, this is all very nourishing. To be in this habitat, to see other people enjoying it. This is where I come from. I realized again and again, I'm a Hoosier. I grew up in cornfields, in flat, featureless country, where my parents built a brick one-story, then divorced and got poorer. I will always be from there. I will always be of there. All seem to reach for a mythos, an archetype, a Hoosier ideal that's even portrayed in the state seal, a stout Lincoln-like character taking an axe to an old-growth hardwood, a bison, woolly and wild-eyed, jumping over a felled tree, presumably to some place uncut. Sure, some of it I'm like, I can't believe I wrote that before I had cancer. Some of it I read now, I'm like, it's as if I have cancer when I wrote this thing. So I must have had something in me as I was wrapping it up. Just like I got something in me right now as I share it. So I appreciate you taking the time to let me just read this in this place. It's not just for you, but for this place. It means a lot to me. Yes, we Hoosiers love a good story, especially those we tell ourselves. Case in point, my forebears named the state for the very thing they couldn't abide, yet wanted to emulate: the Indians. The primitive life, as Dunn put it. Is that good? Is that bad? Does it make Indiana any different from anywhere else? I don't know. What I do know is that my nephew, like me, has that itch, that restlessness that comes with realizing you identify with the bison more than the woodman, with looking west more than east. And time. Everybody's got their own way to navigate something like cancer, I suppose, just like they have their own way to navigate having kids or being married or going through hardships. But for me, being out in a place like this or bigger, wilder spots, that seems essential. I wore hiking boots and cargo shorts and tied a red bandana around my head, whatever I thought people were supposed to wear as environmental educators, a job that chose me as much as I chose it. I pictured myself on a trail in some faraway unknown and began making plans. I began working up the courage to believe the story I was telling myself, a story I'm still telling myself. You can bet, but you get my point. The myth making, the restlessness, this primordial itch lies inside you, and you don't know if it awakens with a book, a felled suburban woods, or your first hard look in the mirror as part of a broken family. And you can only scratch that itch, itchy as all get out, on the go. You start figuring out who you are and where you are practically one and the same. And you're in your 20s, feeling that first hint of numbness, and you know the time has come. Either jump that log or not. Remember the log in the state seal? Whether I call it, it happened as I was a wilderness ranger, and now this is my new wilderness, or whether I call it new territory I have to light out in. Whether I'm doing it for myself to live as healthfully and pleasurably as I can, for my wife, for mom, for all of you. Or whether I'm just trying to learn as much as I can, contribute to science, which I so much believe in. We change as we need to when we learn. But hey folks, how you doing?
Hey, doing all right.
Howdy.
Yeah, you too. Then again, isn't that what it means to be a Hoosier? To light out, to forge a new life on the edge of the unknown? No wonder my forebears were proud. No wonder their stories, their aspirations, whether I understood it or not, I carried on their tradition when I moved west my first time at Henry's age, jobless, hungry, literally hungry. I landed about as far as I could go in Washington State. To me, a cornfield kid, the Pacific Northwest was the frontier. A storm-lashed coast, snowy summits, and sinewy salmon-fat streams racing through conifers and Indian reservations. I didn't know anybody. The people themselves were a wilderness. And for the better part of 3 decades, with a little time spent elsewhere, I gave the West some of my best seasons, got married, even got wealthier. Yet here I am now, stuck in Charleston, on lockdown. Have I forgotten my heritage? Am I still a Hoosier? Will I ever light out again? You have to keep reading the book to see where that goes, huh? We're taught so often that life's supposed to go like this. You know, you climb this big ladder, and if we aren't doing that, we're not succeeding, or we think we have friends that might be doing just that. It just hasn't gone like that. It's just, there's just ups and downs. And I encourage you to, now that you got, you know, a series of those 5-year, half a decade periods, you're getting memories, you're getting things to reflect on, you're getting those ups and downs, and you're getting a chance to, you know, the second shots to try it again. I'm thinking a lot about second shots. Essays on manhood, restlessness, and the geography of hope. In particular, I'm thinking of the essay Hoosier. And it happens to involve you quite a bit, but me too. And I thought I'd zoom ahead to the section that focuses in on that state seal. It starts with a quote from a friend of mine. We're connected on Facebook. His name's Bob Cowser. "You can only come from one place," wrote Bob Cowser Jr., one of my MFA professors. "And it sticks with you, good and bad." As I've been writing my own book, my first real stab at a book, I realized again and again, I'm a Hoosier. I grew up in cornfields, in flat, featureless country, where my parents built a brick one-story, then divorced and got poorer. I will always be from there. I will always be of there. It sticks with me, as Cowser said, good and bad. What's a Hoosier? No one knows for sure. The name was forged through folklore in the early 1800s, when Indiana marked the woodsy frontier north of the Ohio River. Some historians attribute the moniker to a man named Samuel Hoosier, a contractor who hired burly types to build canals near Louisville, Kentucky. Hoosier's men became Hoosiers. That's that. End of story. Others prefer the more colorful tale of pioneers yelling a query through locked tight cabin doors. Who's rustling in the darkness, looming, unseen? Imagine wandering friend or foe while grabbing your rifle and powder, the same tools you use to put food on the table, squirrel, rabbit, turkey. Who's there? You might holler. With the Shawnee answer back. And don't forget the brawls, the tavern brawls in river towns with mixed company. A man walks in and steps on something squishy, something bloody. Who's here? He asks nonchalantly, curious but not surprised. Indiana boys are present. Bump into one, expect a knife fight. There are innumerable stories like this. Not all are silly, but all seem to reach for a mythos, an archetype, a Hoosier ideal that's even portrayed in the state seal. A stout Lincoln-like character taking an axe to an old-growth hardwood, a bison, woolly and wild-eyed, jumping over a felled tree, presumably to some place uncut, and perhaps silliest of all, the sun setting over small mountains. This has always baffled me. Indiana is not mountainous, not by any stretch of the imagination. Its highest point, Hoosier Hill, at 1,257 feet, is actually a miles-wide pile of glacial debris near the Ohio state line, rising about 30 feet above the surrounding farmland. Even southern Indiana's rolling woods and hollows have a vertical relief of only 300 feet. The ski area, Paoli Peaks, for instance, trundles along with artificial snow. What highlands, then, are we talking about? Historian Jacob Dunn in 1919 interpreted the state seal, this is a quote, "It is not a setting sun, but a sun rising on a new commonwealth west of the mountains," by which at that time was always meant to be the Allegheny Mountains. Huh? In Pennsylvania? 300 miles east of Indiana? Quote, "The woodman represented civilization, subduing the wilderness, and the buffalo, going west, represented the primitive life, retiring in that direction before the advance of civilization." Retiring? As in relaxing? How quaint. Skedaddle west. I have no reason to disagree with Dunn, but I'm still annoyed. I'm annoyed because Indiana, its state seal, its mythology, is a con job. It's a con job like so many of the neighborhoods I've known since youth. All named for what they wish they had, or what they actually did have before the bulldozers and construction crews showed up. You know the type. Deer Crossing, Fox Hollow, Woodhaven, a land where every place is like no place in particular. As James Kunstler wrote in The Geography of Nowhere, a book I read the final summer I lived with my mother in Fishers, Indiana. Talk about suburbia. Talk about a son bringing his mom down every day in Fishers in the 1990s. It was a bloodletting. Another forest felled for a housing development, another creek straightened, another so-called park designated for nature restored. Not for nature restored, but for soccer fields, for ball diamonds, for retention ponds with shorelines that weed whackers kept clearing of the cattails. But critters can retire, no? They can skedaddle? Be positive, Mom said. You're so mouthy. And so I tried to be positive because those neighborhoods meant progress, a progress my single mother could claim as her own. But I'm not disparaging those locations or her. I'm lamenting them. I'm lamenting them because I know Henry, my nephew, and his siblings, and too many kids in too many American neighborhoods are also getting conned, but they don't even get the benefit of seeing the trees before the bulldozers arrive, before the braggadocio of economic growth kicks in. Their homes went up in cornfields, or what had been cornfields, in the good old days, my myths. I'll share more later. What do you think of that so far?